Welcome back to Economics. This is Dr. Kling. Today's talk is social versus private cost. So far we've been talking about markets and consumer surplus, and it seems like anything government does, whether it imposes a tax or a regulation of some sort, reduces consumer surplus and or producer surplus, and so in some sense makes people worse off. Today I'm going to talk about the situations where government action would make people better off, according to this kind of approach to doing the analysis of looking at consumers and producer surplus. And the way that works is if social cost and private cost are different. So let's say we take a standard market in equilibrium, supply and demand. Oops, let's put the demand curve sloping downward, the supply curve sloping upward. But let's suppose that there's some social benefit that's not captured in the market, and we'll explain a little bit how that could happen. So, in fact, right now outside my window there is a social cost of somebody mowing their lawn. I don't know if you can hear it. But anyway, we'll give that example in a few minutes. But let's say there's a social benefit that's not captured in the market. Then if you were omniscient and looking down at this thing from society's point of view, you would have a social benefit line that is higher than the demand curve. And so what government ought to do, so what that says is that the socially optimum quantity, hold on a second, sorry, that noise was just getting ridiculous. So anyway, the socially optimum quantity, since there's more social benefit that's not being captured in the market, the socially optimum quantity is here, we'll call that Q star, versus here QE. And so there are various ways that the government can induce the market to provide the socially optimum quantity. One way is to subsidize supply, so that would reduce the cost to suppliers. You pay suppliers some extra to supply, and so that would shift the supply curve like that to get to the, well, I guess we'd have to shift it, hang on. I'm going to completely undo that. If you subsidize supply, you increase supply to something like this, which gets you to the socially optimum quantity. Alternatively, the government could do something to subsidize demand. It could pay people to buy the good. Here comes that noise again. Pay people to buy the good, and the demand would then shift out to line up with the social benefit curve. And that's how you could get the socially optimum quantity produced, either through some form of subsidy. Another case, sort of the opposite case, is where the social cost is greater than what the market arrives at. So we would have, again, and this time hopefully I'll draw the supply curve upward sloping, demand downward sloping. But let's say the social cost is higher, like this noise pollution that's going outside my window right now has a high social cost. And so what the government can do then is, since this is so now the social equilibrium quantity, I'll call that Q star, is lower than the equilibrium produced by the market. So the government should impose some kind of tax on this good. You can either tax the suppliers to shift the supply to the left, or it can put the tax on consumers. We can think of that as shifting the demand to the left. Okay, so we've got now some cases where we think there's a case for government getting involved. Where do these come from? Why do we have in this case, a social cost line that differs from the market supply line. And another way of putting this is that we say that there are externalities. So an externality, so let's do two cases. Let's do a positive externality is a benefit not captured by the people involved in the transaction. Not involved. So the example I always use, unfortunately this just closed recently, but for many years there was a Necco wafer factory, that's kind of a candy, in Cambridge, and there was just a very nice smell. And every time economics students walked by the Necco wafer factory, we said to ourselves, boy, we should drop a nickel into the factory to subsidize their production, because we're getting a benefit that doesn't come from transacting in the candy market. People producing and buying and selling Necco wafers have no idea that this factory is producing this nice smell, this positive externality. Other types of externalities could be negative, pollution being a classic one. Some people would say that even disregarding pollution and the production of carbon, that the use of oil by consumers has a negative externality in that it strengthens politically countries that we don't like. So that could be another negative externality. So you can list a lot of negative externalities associated with consuming gasoline and carbon-based products. That is that they impose costs that you don't bear yourself when you're using them. Things like pollution. So let's take something like education and divide up education and divide up things into private benefits and externalities. Okay, so for example, one argument for subsidizing education is that, boy, people sure earn a lot more when they have more education. But that extra salary is a private benefit. You shouldn't need a government subsidy to get you to become educated for an extra salary. On the other hand, there's a notion that people become better citizens. And becoming a better citizen is really an external benefit. It benefits other people, not the people sort of buying and selling education services. So better citizen would be an positive externality. So it's important to separate out these things. Another example would be owner-occupied housing. People say that with owner-occupied housing, people take better care of the property, of the home. But a lot of that is a private benefit. We have this negative externality. Hang on. If I take better care of the property, then whether I'm a renter or an owner, the property will be worth more, the value will be preserved, and as an owner I obviously benefit. As a renter I could indirectly benefit. The landlord should try to reward me for taking care of the property. Sometimes the reward is you pay a security deposit, and then if you take care of the property you get your security deposit back. If you don't, then you don't get your security deposit back. So there's a private benefit that's taken care of. The social benefit is the benefit to the neighbor. So if my neighbor takes care of their property, and I'm going to pause it. So as a neighbor, if I get to, if my neighbor takes better care of his property, then the value of my property will go up somewhat. And so it's that external benefit that that taking care of better property, if it's actually true, would provide. So this the subsidies for owner-occupied housing are really another, as with the subsidies of education, I think somewhat confuse the issue of private benefits and social benefits. Probably the social benefit, that is the amount that's external, that isn't captured by the person doing the transaction, is probably pretty small. The private benefits are very large relative to social benefits. So that would argue that you don't need a tremendous subsidy to fix whatever gap there is between private cost and social cost, or private benefit and social benefit. So that's an overview of social cost versus private cost, and we'll see you next time.